Welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm Baruch, host of Paradigms. Thanks for tuning in. Glad to be here with you. In this episode, we're welcoming back a wonderful guest, last on the show a few years ago, who is getting ready to go out on tour to celebrate a record they made 30 years ago. It's the 30th anniversary of this great record. We'll be talking about that and much more. So let's get right to it now and meet my guest on this episode of Paradigms. Loreena McKennitt, welcome back to Paradigms. It's so nice to see you.
And you.
I'm very excited to talk with you about a bunch of things. There's the world, of course, and issues that we're both concerned about. But I just want to start out by acknowledging the 30th anniversary of The Visit. And I've been listening to it, and its magnificence has not paled at all.
Oh, thank you.
Just beautiful. And I actually listened to it this morning preparing as we're here in New Mexico dealing with forest fires. And the music was perfect because it's so stirring and deep and speaks to loss and the intensity of life. So perfect soundtrack for the moment.
Wow. glad it has some meaning in these situations, you know.
Yeah.
For sure.
So we talked 4 years ago. That went by fast.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
Oh, goodness. So that would have been 2018. So we had a full lap of touring between 2018, 2019, and the fall of 2019, I decided I was going to take a break and a hiatus and so on. Little did I know we were going to come into a pandemic, and that was going to be how some of it would be spent. But, we scooted well past through the pandemic, at least so far. But I wanted to focus on some personal things in this period of time, lean against some other subjects like climate change or climate emergency, and just be part of the community, because part of the downside of being an artistic nomad, you don't settle in roots very strongly sometimes. So that was something I wanted to do and with my family. So probably the biggest project of last winter was tackling a glass factory that was proposed for our area, which was going to have huge environmental challenges to it. So I was leading forces in that battle. But in the meantime, we're building footprints for touring over the next year. Just on Friday of last week, myself and my team produced a benefit concert for Ukraine, which was a wonderful evening. So got our mitts in many things.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about, and it was on Friday the 13th, which some of us consider auspicious.
Yes.
Wonderful. And so you're going to do one concert in each province to commemorate the visit, and you're playing the whole record.
Yes, it's if we wanted to dip our toes back into touring, and we felt that would be best in my own backyard, so to speak. So we've set up these handful of dates in Ontario and Quebec. I'd love to have set up a bigger tour. There are a lot of things that come into play because I still have a son who's at school, and also because I don't have a traditional manager. So everything that happens, I'm kind of at the helm of it, and my colleagues. So we become bottlenecks of what's possible.
Did the pandemic give you that time you needed? I mean, it's been so ironic because it was horrible. It's been horrible and difficult. And it's also been a gift in so many weird ways to so many.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's extraordinary. It really has caused us to look at our needs from our wants a bit more. No, it gave me and certainly more time to focus on some things that I'd hoped to do outside of a pandemic, stay closer to home, reduce the options. You didn't have to struggle with a choice that comes with affluence and technology. So, I spent a lot of time growing, not knowing where the food chains were. So we planted a lot.
Good, smart.
and preserved a lot. So I don't have to do so much of that this year.
Yeah. I think the biggest gift for me has been it makes me more present. I think it makes us all more present. The past ain't coming back, and the future is uncertain. These things are always true, but this really has kind of given it an energy, I think. And at the beginning, I'm sure you remember when there were wild animals in the cities and clear skies over Mumbai, and it was this moment of sort of hope for humanity that then we went back to the status quo, but it showed us that we can do this differently. Yeah.
It certainly has been an opportunity now. Whether we've been able to seize it to its full potential, I'm not so sure. I mean, it's such a different world in so many ways now. Yeah. I mean, my concerns with respect to technology have not diminished any over the past 10 years. And of course, with the horrific events that took place over the weekend in your country and the role of social media in that, it's, my personal view remains that until we get the dark and downside of the technology under control, so many things are going to suffer.
Yeah.
But there are many great uses of it as well.
Oh, of course. I mean, we get to have this conversation, but this country, the United States, I mean, Canada's and the United States are very different culturally. And this is like this young country that has so much influence, and it's like giving a child too much power. They don't know what to do with it. And so things here have run amok. And we don't have a culture of kindness prevailing anymore. Not that it always was, but there was more of it. And so all this shadow stuff has come out into the open, which is good. It's good it's out in the open and we can face it, but it's kind of scary and horrific. And what happened yesterday is just one more horrible, violent tragedy for humans. When will we learn?
Well, we've got some of our own stuff happening in our country. That's for sure. I don't think you folks have a corner on the market.
No, but we export it to you. It's like very nice to be talking with Loreena McKennitt again, and we'll be back with more of this conversation. We're going to listen to a bunch of her album, The Visit, in this episode, celebrating the 30th anniversary of its release. We're going to start out with a song called Bonnie Portmore, Loreena McKennitt from her record The Visit. You're listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life. Loreena McKennitt. That song is called Bonnie Portmore, and that's from her record, The Visit. And now let's get back to my conversation with Loreena McKennitt. How does the music come to you?
It comes in different ways. Sometimes it comes invited. I'll set the table, set the circumstances in which I'm more likely to be creative. I'm sure that, you ask this question to other artists and they'll have a different response. But for myself, it's a bit like fishing. You can get your rods out and you can go early in the morning and the right temperature and or the rain or whatever the conditions are. But it doesn't mean you're going to catch anything. You just heighten the chances that you'll catch something. And I look at creativity in a similar way sometimes. Particularly when I'm aiming to create, a project like a recording. But there are other times I'm just wandering around life, minding my own business, and an idea or a melody or a phrase or something will come up, and I say, gotta hang on to that. So I have a little book of little ideas, and when those creative seasons come, which aren't often enough as I wish, but when they do, at least I've got some notes to launch from. So that will come in lyrics and phrases of words, or they'll come in melodies. And I'll kind of match. I'll say, if it's just a melody, I'll say, what does that speak to? What's the sentiment there? Then there are other times when I think of the last recording, Lost Souls, I was asked to write a piece to commemorate the Vimy conflict in the First World War. And so I kind of had to channel something. So that was a very purpose-driven, a very theme-focused creative exercise. So it's kind of, again, putting your mind in the headspace and sort of channeling certain things that you've already experienced before to kind of get that creative path going.
Did you expect to reach so many people years ago?
No, my whole career is a unintended consequence or something. Because I always wanted to be a veterinarian. And I thought, well, if I don't become a veterinarian, maybe I'll end up in wildlife conservation or forestry, other themes that are deeply dear to my heart. But the music sort of chose me rather than me it. And I began busking in the streets of Toronto and a few other cities. Some in, Vancouver, I was down at the Granville Market. And when I was in London, England, I was at Covent Garden. And when I was working at the Abbey Theatre in Dublin, I went down to Grafton Street. So it was kind of humble beginnings like that. But what was great about busking was it is such an honest situation. If people don't like what you're doing, they'll just walk on by. And those who do like will stay, listen. They might buy the first days, of course, it was cassette and then CDs, and they'd put a little money in the hat. And so I felt those first years, 85 to 90, 1990, were me really getting a very close feel for was there any appetite for what I was doing. So that was largely through the busking. But once I joined forces with the Warner Music Group, my music then became internationally accessible. And it was quite surprising to see how many people in different cultures and places seemed to latch on to something that I was doing.
Well, between your inspirations and creativity and having some resources, you've created a sound that is recognizable around the world, that is very rich and resonates with so many people. It must be, that must be a trip for you.
Yes, it is. But I'd like to think that many people, yourself included, you're doing things that so much of it is a communications exercise. And you feel, for me, the greatest reward is just knowing that my music has meaning. I have a colleague in the other office, and she was just saying, well, this morning, the fan mail, we've got somebody from a corrections institute, penitentiary somewhere in the United States. And here we've got from a nun in England, and the spectrum is quite fascinating, but gratifying. And just from the standpoint that what you do has meaning.
It does sort of make it worth it, knowing you actually affect people in a way that is uplifting.
Yeah, I think this life is it's only about people, only about relationships.
Yeah. And dogs.
And dogs and cats.
And cats. Here's another track from Loreena McKennitt's album, The Visit. This one is called Between the Shadows, Persian Shadows. That's Between the Shadows, Persian Shadows, from Loreena McKennitt's album, The Visit. And here's the next part of my conversation with Loreena McKennitt. I thought of you. I went to the dog rescue shelter on Saturday because of the fires. A lot of animals are displaced. And my neighbor here has been going, and so I went with her. And I thought of you because I know that you love animals. And it was horrific. Yeah. You know, all these beautiful angelic creatures, because to me, dogs are angels, and crying because they're alone and lonely.
Yeah.
So just for listeners' sake, help animals wherever you are, because there is nothing that will fulfill you more in a way. And them, I mean, anyway, I thought of you.
So true.
Yeah.
I've got 2 cats and a dog, and then there's another set of cats in the barn, and they're pretty coddled as well.
And barn cats have their own special place in the world. Back to the music. I know that on this upcoming tour, you're touring with your wonderful colleagues, Caroline Lavelle and Hugh Marsh. And Caroline has played on my friend Tobias' record in the UK, and Caroline is just amazing. And so is Hugh. So you have this incredible accompanists.
Yes. And Brian Hughes. Brian Hughes will also be with me. Yeah. Yes, this is going to be the quartet version, and we'll be performing the full recording of the visit from beginning to end in the first set. And will be something I've not done. Well, actually, no, maybe I did. I think maybe I did it with Book of Secrets. Maybe I did that. I can't remember.
Well, I'm going to try to get to Montreal for the October 2nd show.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
So that would be really lovely. I'd like to ask you another question that I actually haven't asked people. I've been reserving it for someone special, and you're that person, which is, can you describe a bit your cosmology? What do you believe and experience about this existence? Just a little question for you.
Oh, just a little one. Well, I would say it evolves over time. You learn things, you process them, you develop a position, you move on with that understanding, and then you become exposed to more things, other things, you maybe adjust and so on. But I at the end of the day, I do look at this existence with great humility, that there is a greater power than ourselves. And I don't think we understand half of it, but I have a great deal of a reverence for the natural world and the complexity and the beauty that is involved in the natural world, and a great deal of reverence for it. So for me, one of my sanctuaries is just being outside in nature and feeling the diversity and exquisiteness of that, and being very grateful for that. But beyond that, there's, without question, I grew up in quite a liberal Christian church in the prairies, and that certainly has shaped how I've approached the world in some ways. But then being exposed to other religious and spiritual paths, I can see there's a lot of value. And I think at the core of most, there is the overriding essence of love and the importance of love, not as a gratuitous word, but that exercise of committing yourself to people through all kinds of difficulty, or committing yourself to the greater world, the common good.
Love as a practice.
Love is a practice, absolutely. It's not always easy.
We'll be back with more of my conversation with Loreena McKennitt after we hear a couple more tracks from The Visit, starting out with Tango to Evora. You're listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.
Come to me, it seems. Hear the pulse of the land. The ocean's rhythms pull to hold your heart in its hand. When the wind draws strong across the cypress trees, night birds cease their songs, so gather memories. Last night you spoke of a dream where forests stretched to the east, and each bird sang its song, a unicorn chimed in a feast, and in a canister pomegranate tree with wildflowers there, no mortal eye could see. Yet still some mystery befalls, sure as the cock crows at morn. The world in stillness keeps the secret of babes to be born. Come to me, my love, hear the pulse of the land. The ocean's rhythms pull to hold your heart in its hand. I heard an old voice say, don't go far from the land. The seasons have their way, no mortal can understand.
That one's called Courtyard Lullaby. Before that, we heard Tango to Evora from Loreena McKennitt's album The Visit, now celebrating its 30th anniversary. Doesn't this music transport you? I find it to be so almost fantastical. It carries with it both a sense of history and magic, to me anyway. How does this music affect you? What do you think about the things Loreena is saying? We'd love to see your comments and hope folks will subscribe to the podcast here on YouTube. Here's the next part of my conversation with Loreena McKennitt. I think a lot of what is driving our dysfunction is fear. How do you address fear?
I'll confess that I don't feel like fear is a dominant thing in my life. I'm quite very annoyed I'm deeply annoyed. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, and I want to be very careful that I don't drone on in this, but I'm very, very upset at the unregulated internet because if society cannot agree on facts and truth, consensus on that, then we can't get on with dealing with climate emergency, with wars in Ukraine or famine and wars in Yemen or wherever, I feel it strategically to be the most important correction. So I'm sort of influenced less by fear than I am just by how gravely I see this situation of the relentlessness of and the damage of the unregulated internet. So I spent a lot of time reading and thinking about it. We've tried to host some things here. I also own a building where I'm speaking from. It's a family center. And we've run some films and evenings for families to discuss the negative impacts of technology and children and human development and bullying and suicide and addiction and all those sorts of things. Of course, right now I'm gravely preoccupied by it, and its a role in harming our democracies. Democracies none of them are perfect, and they exist in different permutations. But we had our own little January 6th event here in Ottawa in February, which absolutely shocked me to the core, involving some very good people, but who many people have not understood how it's being weaponized and they're being radicalized. And again, over the weekend, etc. So I adamantly feel that until we get control of the internet, things are just going to get worse on all fronts.
And it is this quintessential human issue of we each live to some extent in our own realities, and how do we bring those together? We haven't yet as a group learned that the health of the group matters more in some ways than the opinions of individuals. Individualism versus collectivism, I think, is a false dichotomy. I think that it's individualism and collectivism, just like it's nature and nurture.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to have been widely embraced yet.
Well, I think it's hard, though, because, when I was listening to Frances Hogan, who was dismantling the underbelly of Facebook, and how, people don't often understand the psychology of marketing, and marketing that slides into that jurisdiction that is indoctrinating people. So people don't know what's happening to them, so therefore they can't defend themselves. It's actually fairly complex in some ways. A lot of people are just barely surviving. They're getting up in the morning, going to their job if they have a job, and dealing with the kids and so on. So they're not studying the anatomy of the internet and how it's being regulated. But I found her testimony before Congress and in the UK very, very powerful and very welcome indeed.
Yeah.
So people are vulnerable to hold and be divided. I read a very interesting piece about, some positions that it's a kind of asymmetric warfare emanating from Russia. And essentially what wants to happen is break up Europe, break up the UK, break up United States, and by weaponizing, weaponizing the internet. So
yeah. It's insidious. It's truly insidious. And the thing is, human beings, we're like crows. We like shiny things.
Yes.
We like shiny new.
Mail.
We love pushing buttons, and pulling switches and levers, and whether they be real. Exactly. And so people are in a way seduced by the shiny thing, and then the insidious ideological stuff is put in, and it's very intentional. This is not accidental. It's very intentional. And then we have what we now have. And do you believe there is such a thing as evil?
Not in the kind of biblical sense. Through and obviously I'm not an expert in this, but I think as a species we have vulnerabilities. And yet we're amongst our species, there are very intelligent entities that know, that can prey on that. And they some may be born completely in a very devastating kind of way, others who acquire it through their own bad experiences. But I think there are explanations of it. I don't believe it's like a lightning bolt out of the sky. We just don't understand our species very, very well.
We'll be back with the final part of my conversation with Loreena McKennitt after we hear this one from the visit. It's called The Old Ways. The Old Ways from The Visit by Loreena McKennitt. And now here's the final part of my conversation with Loreena. I'm so glad just that you're out there putting out what you're putting out. I think it matters that every little grain of, whether it's kindness or wisdom or just love, that we keep putting it out even in the face of these challenges.
Yeah, I think people just doing what they can. You know, some people can do big things, other people can do smaller things, but they all are all important. I don't think we can underestimate the value of even just a kind gesture, a kind word when you're getting onto the bus. Or I think sometimes that can be a huge turning point.
A smile can change someone's day. It's cliche, but it's true.
Yeah, it is so true. It is so true. I should also mention, while I think of it, we also undertook a pilot project last December that was a presentation that involved the winter and Christmas music from my 2 recordings. And I invited a very highly regarded, accomplished actor who lives in Stratford here to recite Dylan Thomas's A Child Christmas in Wales. And we were able to present that last December. So we're looking to take that out a bit further this coming December. And if that goes well, we'll hopefully take it to your neck of the woods someday.
That sounds beautiful. I mean, these are the things, these are the gems that nourish us. All of, and as you said, so many people doing these nourishing things. Yeah. That's really great.
Yes, I mean we're plotting. We've plotted a footprint to go into Europe next March and in the summer, and with the hopes to come into actually the northeast of the United States in the fall of 23. That's what's being worked towards. We're clearly, like everyone else, just holding our breath with respect to how COVID is going to. Will it raise its nasty head? Will there be another variant or something? So we're kind of stepping, timidly, piece by piece, and.
So I have one last question for you. What is lifting you up these days?
Oh, I think what's lifting me up is primarily just being outside and in nature, And I think other people who I see really working to make a difference and working to make a difference for other people and people who are really leaning against the climate emergency issue. Again, it can be small things. I live on a farm, so we've planted over the year. I bought the farm in 93, and I think we've planted between 3,000 and 4,000 trees. Last year, we planted 300. This year, we'll be planting less, but we've also converted the pasture into where the cattle can move around, and we're seeing a huge change in the habitat for the birds. They don't have that kind of thing. So, I'm learning from other people and seeing what they're doing. So that lifts me up, doing those kinds of things. And then, of course, knowing that my music has played a part, a healing part or a meaningful part in people's lives, that of course is just so gratifying.
As my neighbor says, if you don't know what to do, just do the next good thing.
That's it. And these are the good old days.
That's wonderful. Loreena, thanks for meeting with me again and talking with me. It's really a pleasure.
Great pleasure. And I wish you all the very best with those wildfires.
Thank you so much.
You and your family and animal family.
And may your tours and your concerts be beautiful. And maybe I'll see you in October in Montreal.
That'd be wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Loreena McKennitt, thank you so much for being on Paradigms. Again, it was really great to talk with you. Congratulations on 30 years since releasing The Visit. It's still a great record. Folks, if you'd like to know more about Loreena, her music, her upcoming concert tour in Canada, her website is loreenamckennitt.com, LOREENAMCKENNITT.com. And if you can make it to one of those amazing shows in Canada, do. I'm hoping I will get to. The things that Loreena is talking about technology, not vilifying it, but really questioning the ways that we use it. And, anyone as they grow up learns to use tools, and hopefully as they mature, they learn to use them more wisely. Maybe humanity can also learn to use our tools more wisely. Good stuff to think about. Thank you, Loreena. If you enjoyed this episode of Paradigms, I hope you'll check out our archive at the Paradigms website, paradigms.life, in iTunes, and wherever else you find your podcasts, and now on YouTube with videos made by Leah Zylona. Check out Paradigms Podcast on YouTube. You can even subscribe. Paradigms has a Patreon campaign going to help pay the bills, and we really appreciate our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. Patreon.com/paradigms. A lot of crazy stuff going on right now. There's still war in Eastern Europe. There's still bombing in North Africa, what we call the Middle East. The Amazon is burning. There are fires in the Southwest in the United States. And the latest thing I heard that really was amazing to me is that the wife of a Supreme Court justice in the United States was conspiring to overthrow a federal election. Seems like such a person should be held accountable, don't you think? I don't know. As my neighbor says, when you don't know what to do, just do the next good thing. And I like that. We're going to end this episode with one more track from Loreena McKennitt's The Visit. It's called Symboline. And let's have the word for the week be wisdom. Maybe we can all aspire to wisdom. Wisdom is sort of kind of the opposite of being impetuous and thoughtless. Wisdom is when you really consider the big picture. So let us aspire to wisdom. All right. Baruch signing off for Paradigms. Me and the Crickets. We'll be back next time with more inspiring people. Until then, be wise and be well.
Winter's righteous, for thy worldly task hast done. Home art gone and ta'en thy wages, golden nets and gold salmons, chimney sweepers come to dust, the sceptred learning physic must all follow this and come to dust.
You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.